Leeds United are facing a significant delay to transfer business in this market, and that is absolutely not what we need. There are some significant delays that we will need to deal with if we want to succeed in this market, and it could cause issues with a lot of transfer moves both in and out, and that is a potentially huge problem for the Whites, who want to be very, very mobile in this market, get things done early, and prepare for the season with a full pre-season, unlike last year. So, what exactly is the problem? There was one player that sort of signposted this and was the source of this video existing because I saw the interview and I was like, huh, I hadn't considered that. So let's dive into it. The main example so far is Max Wuber, who very recently did an interview with, I think, some national media because he's been called up by Austria's squad. And he said in this recent interview that he doesn't want to hear from his agent for 4 weeks, which is roughly when the Euros ends. Instead, he is going to be focusing on Euro 2024, which I completely understand from like a media standpoint. It just annoys me massively because, in my opinion, we have a question of whether or not this provides a much wider problem beyond Max Wuber. Because if we have any wider problems with the amount of players that we need to get out and the amount of players that we need to get in, that's not really ideal for getting that full pre-season with a squad that works under Daniel Farke. So with potential big delays to moves, who is going to be affected? First up, there are over 600 players heading to Germany, which is huge, to be honest, with the Euros being 26 players per squad now, which is more than normal. Normally it's 23, but they've escalated that because player fitness is horrendous because the calendar's a nightmare. In 24 teams, which is also the most there has ever been, leveling the record, I think. And that ain't good. That's 600 players that are potentially not easy to have as targets for the foreseeable future because they will be focusing on their international campaigns before their club career. A lot of players that you see as mercenaries or stuff like that will still give a shit when it comes to their national team because their national team is what they can go to and look at and say, brilliant, I'm committed to you for life, let's win some silverware. Whereas the likes of Tyler Adams, who came to Leeds, we welcomed him and we enjoyed him while he was here, even though he was injured a lot of the time, but he pissed off instantly because he got injured on, I think, international duty, didn't play for an extended period of time, but he gave his all for the international team, which tells me that players are going to pay more attention to that than their club career because eventually they can get a move either way. This similar example is Memphis Depay, who is now a free agent, but he's not decided where he's going yet because he's paying all of his attention to the way that the Dutch squad go about Euro 2024. Not only because like it will help with the career and that sort of stuff, but because it's a good shop window to put yourself in. If you are, as an example, Max Wuber, why would you move now when you can simultaneously show up for Austria? Imagine Austria somehow gets to the final or something and he puts in majestic performances week on week on week. Then he's unlocked himself a market of clubs that he can move to that he wouldn't have had before. But because he's moved earlier, he doesn't get that. That's why you'll see a lot of players not moving because they'll be like, well, the Euros could be really good for me, both in terms of winning a trophy internationally and my reputation. Basically, as a rule of thumb, international tier players will be significantly harder to move over this period of time. Now, that's the problem, but how exactly does it affect Leeds? I think it does in a few ways. First up, let's admit, the players that we want are in that category. When we're signing players this summer, hello, Iris. Sorry, the cat's gone a bit nuts. We don't just want to be signing players that will be able to do the championship, because that means that once we get promoted to the Premier League, either we keep them and there's a little bit of a risk, or we sell them and we've effectively just gone through a bunch of fees and stuff for completing the deal without like getting our value for money. So we want players that will be able to make that leap into the Premier League, and for the most part, those are potentially international players, especially when you're looking on the cheaper end of the scale, because Eastern European players are sort of undervalued as a rule of thumb. Add on to the fact that you can look at other players that aren't picked internationally, but their attention might be on the Olympics too. It's an under-23s competition, but we are a club that tends to look at young players with a lot of talent, and that's who's, sorry for the hiccup, that's who's going to the Olympics. Which means that if you are looking at some players right now and you want to get a deal done before the Olympics, fine, but they might not want to move yet either. It's all very tough, and as a rule of thumb, it makes securing those key signature signings incredibly difficult. You can also look at non-internationals or the non-qualified nations, but as a rule of thumb, if you're not getting picked for your national team, you're not as good as those players. And that means that we're effectively locking ourselves out of markets if we're saying, well, we only want the players that aren't going to the Euros or the Olympics, or, as I found out when I was doing a little bit of research for this video, Copa America, which is also at the same time, which means that it could be very, very difficult to get Brendan Aronson shifted. That starts on the 14th of June. Is he really going to want to move in the next 11 days and distract himself from what is a tournament that they might actually be able to win? I don't think he wants that. It's what we want. We want him moved as soon as possible. But how feasible that is a big question. So ultimately, having a look at the window as it is and what it means going forwards, I'm a little bit spooked because signing players is significantly tougher. Without a doubt, it's going to get a lot more difficult to do because you don't want to distract the players. They don't want to be distracted, and their agents might not even be taking calls right now. Offloading international players is significantly more difficult as well. So Rasmus Christensen, I don't know if he's been called up, but he, for example, is someone that we would not want to stay at the club. Is it going to be harder to move him on? Will we have to wait until after the Euros and then clubs are less looking for those players because they might have found other options? It leads to a very, very, very static market, a market that isn't moving, a market where it's like moving through sludge, trying to get something completed. And that's not a place to be when you're a side that has a lot of players going out, needs a lot of players coming in, and wants to actually have a decent enough preseason with as many of these players as possible. We need to be incredibly mobile in this market. And my biggest worry at the moment is that somehow we might not be able to do that. She's timed that really well. Anyway, let me know what you think. Who do you think from the Leeds United squad is likely to make a move away from Leeds United? Who is potentially going to stay? Is there anyone in terms of outgoings outside of an Aronson, a Vuber, a Christensen, that it might be harder to shift outwards as a result of this? Who would we potentially be looking to sign that falls into that nice category of not international or not in the qualified nations, but also not Olympic? It's tough. And yeah, I just wish things were easier for this transfer window, to be honest with you. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, pop a like down below. It's very easy to do. Subscribe if you're not yet. That's always massively appreciated. And leave a comment. Hope you enjoyed, and I will see you later. Also, a quick test for you. I left an Easter egg in the last video's description. It was like 8 Doctor Who episode titles. Pop back and let me know how many you get. That could be tough. See you later.